Good afternoon. Welcome to Coronavirus and Our Mental Health. Today is February 15th, the day after Valentine's Day. And I'm Ken Burtness coming to you from the North Shore in Hawaii. Today we've got a real special show for you. It's a show about friends gathering together and celebrating here in Hawaii. All right. Today my guest is David Butts, a good friend of mine, and we've been together for over a decade now. We joined together in the men's group that Steve Katz runs, and it's been a good time. And David has done something that I really admire. He's brought people together to celebrate a full moon with a full moon party and out on the beach. And it's a wondrous thing because it's a wondrous time here in Hawaii. And David, I want to welcome you very much to the show. And maybe a good place to start is how you got the idea of this full moon party and how it came about.
Yeah, well, thank you, Ken, for having me today. And we started the full moon party, my wife and I, in 2017. And it was actually her idea to begin it. And she and two of her Japanese friends wanted to do meditation on the beach once a month. So they decided to pick the full moon as the day that they do the meditation. And they started out with just laying out some mats on the beach. We're in Kailua, so we see the moon rise from the ocean on the east side of the island. And they began with musical instruments, playing drums, whatever else they had, and a silent meditation of about 10 minutes while the moon was rising. Then they threw in the idea of having a potluck after the meditation. The full moon always rises at the same time as the sun sets. So you're always going to be watching it rise around dinner time. So we threw in a potluck dinner at our house, which we live one house back from the beach here. And that was the second step of the full moon party. You can see there in the photograph, it's grown quite a bit from the 2 or 3 people that we started with. And Kazuo, my wife, has added different elements along the way. For a while, she was doing a Hawaiian culture talk, which was really interesting, informative, with a friend of ours who taught Hawaiian culture at Kamehameha High School. After that, we added a plastic cleanup element to the moon party. People would arrive a little early. We'd go down to the beach with little sifting devices and try to clean up the microplastic that's always floating up on the beach. She encouraged people to bring their own plate and utensils for the potluck portion of the party. But as it evolved over time, it developed into a combination of this meditation, beach cleanup, Hawaiian culture, and then just a normal, let's have fun party with music and dancing and people, all different walks of life getting together. And that's actually become one of the foremost benefits of it, is that you just get to meet a great variety of people. A lot of whoever we encounter the month leading up to the full moon, will often invite them to come on, and then we meet up with our other friends. Magic happens.
Magic's a good word for that, David. It's amazing. I know you started in 2017. Can we talk a little bit about when the coronavirus came in early 2020? I assume that the full moon party went on hold for a while, and now it's come back full force. Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like when you had to sort of stop, and then what it was like when you restarted the full moon party, and how that changed things, if at all?
Oh yeah, yeah, that was not a great period for large gatherings in your home. In fact, they were ordered to stop by the governor's emergency proclamations. And as I'm sure you remember, all this was happening. December 2019 was when the very first of the coronavirus started out in China. We did have a full moon party in December 2019, and the last one before the pandemic, we had on February 8th, 2020, and it was one of our largest. I think we had about 50 people, and one of our best, really, because we had from age 6 to age 86 in our house on that night. And it was just a real exciting array of people. But that's February 8th. The coronavirus started really showing up across the U.S. Lockdown started in late February, I believe, early March. We didn't have a March, we didn't have an April, we didn't have a May. In June, we started, and with much fewer people. We just had about five, um, 5 or 6 of our closest friends. We stayed outside. Everybody was wearing masks. Um, but at least we did it, and we could say that we got the moon party started, and gathered down on the beach. We did the same, basically followed the same pattern, down at the beach to watch the moon rise, do a little cleanup, do a little meditation, come back to our house for a potluck and conversation, maybe some music and dancing. Um, we also had to, with a potluck, everything had to be adjusted. You couldn't just have people digging out of the same pot. So Kazuya would make plates for everybody and serve them. As I said, everybody would wear masks. This was a time when the governor was telling you how many people you could gather with in your house, how many people indoor, how many people outdoor. We switched it to total outdoor, and we've kept it that way up until the last one, which we had at the beginning of this month. So that was one change that continued through the pandemic and on after. But one thing that I'd say about that is that, I'm sure you're well aware of how everybody had a different sense of what they were comfortable with during the pandemic. And, and of course, we weren't pushing people to come, but we would tell them that we were going to be as careful as we could be. We would wear masks, we would do social distancing, we do it outside. We're on the windward side, so almost always a breeze. So we thought the threat of anybody contracting the virus at one of our moon parties was minimal. And as far as I know, nobody ever did. We've never had a report of somebody saying they believe that they got the virus after one of our parties. And then we just gradually started expanding it along with the regulations being relaxed. And I remember really watching closely every time they'd announce a new set of regulations as to what's the date when you can have 10 people gather outside, and then 25 people gather outside, and then inside, and then everything back to normal. It just was a painfully slow process, but I do think for me, being able to, we had our little group of about five of our closest 5 or 6 friends who had formed our own little bubble, and we felt safe with each other. And we gathered throughout the coronavirus, and it really made me feel good about, the virus not keeping me from seeing anybody. I feel sorry for the people who really had to hold up in their um, homes without seeing any friends. Every time I see a photograph of a person sitting at the window waving at their relatives outside the window, it really saddens me. So I felt uh, happy that we were able to um, continue to meet up at least with a handful of people.
Yeah, and we're certainly lucky living in Hawaii. When I started getting back together with friends, it was always outside. And there's so many places that we can meet to share food or to, uh, well, like you say, oftentimes just bring our own food and being very careful of sharing anything like that. But being outside in Hawaii is just glorious. And so a lot of my friends and a lot of the groups that I belong to met at the parks. There's so many beautiful parks on this island, as well as the neighbor islands, and so many places that you can go and feel comfortable. I think that's the other thing that really resonated with me is how you approached it through the comfort zone. Um, that's the way I felt during the pandemic was it had to be whoever you were getting together with, whether it be one-on-one or two-on-two or whatever, everybody had to feel comfortable. If people didn't feel comfortable, then it wasn't going to happen, or at least we were going to have to wait to gather with those friends until everybody was comfortable and that we were comfortable as well. There were certain things that I was not comfortable with that other people were comfortable with quicker than I was, and certain things that other people were not as comfortable as I was at certain points. Uh, but the friendship continued as long as all of us understood that the friendship would continue when we both felt comfortable. And I thought that was, such a key to your gatherings and such a wonderful thing. Plus the idea of meeting a lot of different people. That was fabulous. Now, I guess that's my next question because I know you've lived a lot of different places, including Japan for many years. Um, I was going to ask you, if somehow something came along and said, uh, David, there's a thing where you can go someplace else and live someplace else. And here are the advantages. And you think to yourself, gee, I'd like to do that. And say sometime in the future, you're living someplace else. Would you and your wife still do the full moon party? Because the full moon is every place on earth. And if you would do the full moon, continue with the full moon party, I'm guessing it would be quite different depending upon the locations you're in. And I thought that was sort of a fascinating questions to ask. For instance, I lived in Alaska for a while, and I can imagine doing the full moon and the Northern Lights party at the same time. So I was wondering your thoughts on that. If you were someplace else, would you still do the full moon party, and how would it go?
Yeah, I would hope that we would get one going no matter where we live. We did live in Tokyo for 11 years, and there too, our house was sort of a gathering place for our friends. I remember having mixed couples, gaijin, Japanese, American Japanese couples come over for Thanksgiving, come over for New Year's, do people's birthdays. If you're in an urban environment, seeing the moonrise is kind of a challenge because it's usually being hidden by a building or coming up above one of the buildings next door to you or something like that. But as long as you can get to a spot where you can see the moon, And maybe, the moon, unlike the sun, comes up at a different time every day. It's usually about 45 minutes to 50 minutes later every day. And so you could time it wherever you live to when you first see the moon and pick the right day for when it corresponds with a dinner time so that you could have the gathering with food, always very important. And back to the issue about people's comfort levels, uh, that was such a difficult issue during the pandemic. And, really kind of drove a wedge between people that was unfortunate. And, I mean, I think my wife and I were, based on our group of friends, were more on the loose side. I mean, we continued to gather, which a lot of people thought was too risky. Um, and but yeah, and so some of our friends were hesitant to meet up with us, knowing that we were gathering once a month for the moon parties. So they thought that, yeah, we're taking more risk than they're comfortable with. And my attitude was to just try to respect whatever level of isolation or interaction they were comfortable with, and just try not to push in any way people to do something that they're not comfortable with. Uh, and I'm glad to see that now that things have gotten somewhat back to normal. I don't see a lot of hangover from that. I do hear people from time to time saying so and so is an anti-vaxxer, or and there was a lot of conflict over who wore masks and didn't wear masks towards the end of um, if there was an end of the pandemic. Those sort of things were really disturbing, and I'm really happy that we're getting past that now.
I'm guessing that most of those people who were fairly uncomfortable, starting back up with the full moon party, um, I'm guessing that most of them finally came back. Is that true? And I'm sure some of them maybe not, but I was guessing most of them are most of them back.
Yeah, I think that pretty much everybody that was coming to the moon parties pre-pandemic uh, is now coming back. And, we're still gathering outside, as I said. So that's one thing. But you see a lot of people hugging, sitting next to strangers, eating, talking. We're sharing the food. Um, I realize all those things are the potential spreaders, but that's the level that we're comfortable with, and it seems most people are comfortable with now.
Great. I wanted to go back quickly to the question about having the full moon party elsewhere, because I've been fortunate to spend some time in Japan and Korea myself, and I was thinking when I was mulling over that question, I was thinking, gee, we had a full moon party over in Japan or Korea. Uh, we could have a super full moon party when the cherry blossoms are out, and I just thought that would be a terrific addition to the full moon party. In addition to seeing the moon, seeing all those beautiful cherry blossoms that I remember so well.
Yeah, well, like I said, I did live in Tokyo for 11 years, and cherry blossom season was definitely my favorite. It was such a contrast to see the hardworking, conservatively dressed, very private Japanese open up, uh, almost as it was like a Mardi Gras or carnival atmosphere. They spread the big tarp under the trees. They, of course, take their shoes off when they step onto the tarp, sit in a large circle with all the food put in the center of the circle, beer, sake, everything else, families, workers, co-workers. It's a terrific atmosphere. And it is that, if you don't have some sort of gathering of friends to celebrate life like that, it's really sad. It's such a wonderful thing. And to get it on, I wish in Japan it was happened more often. It does on cherry blossom season, obon season in August, and New Year's, Oshogatsu, are the 3 times a year, the 3 times in a year that you'll see the Japanese really cut loose and enjoy themselves. And it's such a pleasure to be a part of that.
Absolutely. And, the full moon party, meeting, I guess we get a full moon 13 times a year rather than 12. So that's just a wonderful thing. And just to live in a place like Hawaii. And that was one of the things that made me very appreciative of you having this full moon party, because I think so many people here forgot that we're sort of living in paradise. You sort of lost track by being inside so much and being away from friends, and that how glorious a place that we live in, how fortunate we are to live here. So I really love that about your party and keeping people connected up. And I especially like the fact that they're all coming back now so wonderfully, because some people are finding it hard to reconnect. We've been without connection, many people, for a long time now. And for those people who are having a hard time connecting, maybe I would like to ask at this particular time, would you have any advice for people on connecting? For instance, if somebody wanted to do a full moon party, maybe out at the leeward side or up at the North Shore with in my area, would you have any advice on how they should start one up or to give one?
Well, one piece of advice I'd have is I believe that the real joy from these parties comes from having a good number of people gather together. And I've learned through the process of inviting people and then seeing who shows up that if you want to have 25 people, invite 50 people. If you want to have 30, invite 60.
Uh-huh.
Roughly half of the people you invite are going to show up. And I do try to, sometimes I'll just go down the list of all my contacts in my phone and send a text to everybody. Within reason. and then you see who shows up. And that's when I was referring to the magic, because you can't control who shows up and who doesn't show up. And one thing I've learned is not to get attached to who shows up or who doesn't show up, or disappointed if somebody doesn't come or somebody does come. I'm never disappointed if somebody does come. But but if you get a variety of your friends, different circles that you may be connected to, they meet up at the moon party, and they discover different ways that they can relate to each other and maybe help each other out. That just seems to happen all the time. And so it's really, it's not a set group that's coming, the same 25 people every month.
Mm-hmm.
It really gets to be every single month, it's a different gathering, a different group. And so that makes it a lot of fun. It makes it interesting just to see what develops.
Absolutely. Yeah. Uh, I think that's one of the great joys of another great joy of living in Hawaii is that we're less attached to the way things have to go. Um, I've spent, obviously I was born on the mainland, although I've lived 51 years in Hawaii. I've, spent a lot of time on the mainland and at various places, East Coast, Midwest, West Coast, and everybody seems to have, this is the way you do it. This is what you've got to do. You've got to do this and you got to prepare this and you got to have this. And you get to Hawaii and people are just more accepting of let it happen, live in the moment, enjoy who's there, enjoy where you're at. Uh, it's just such a glorious thing to be able to embrace that part of Hawaiian life. Um, and it brings us, I think, closer to everybody where, because everybody pitches in, everybody gives, and everybody gets. And it's that wonderful exchange with people and across people. So, yeah, it's one of the joys that I have living here. David, we're getting a little short on time. I wanted to run to the last question, and that is if you could just sort of tell us a little bit about what you think that people really get from going to these, the takeaways, so to speak, the joy that people get from coming to those full moon parties, and also the joy that you get in giving them. Maybe you could say a little bit about that before we sign off.
Sure. Well, it's a combination of the interaction with nature, down on the beach, at the ocean's edge, watching a celestial body come up out of the water, through the clouds, the wind, the waves. Uh, we sometimes have, as you see there, a bonfire down on the beach with this, um, safely done in a little pan that we wash and remove all the leftovers from the beach. But so the nature part and then the human interaction part coming together. I think everybody gets relaxed. They're in a good mood. Um, the day is over. Sometimes we have them on the weekends where the work week is over and you can just let down your hair, enjoy the beauty that surrounds us in Hawaii, and enjoy the people that surround us. It's a real day that I cherish, look forward to, and what else can I say? It's a fun time.
I think you said it all. I would just add one last thing to that because the full moon has always been very special to me. Uh, One, I'm very much interested in myth and legend, and of course, there's lots of myths and legends that surround the moon and the goddesses and gods that are connected with that. But most important of all was when my daughter was very young in the 80s. She and I always walked on the beach because, like you, I'm one house away from the beach. And she and I would go down to the beach and walk at sunset. And we always had this game about who could spot the moon coming up first, the full moon. And if she did, she won for the day. And if I did, I won for the day. Not that we were winning anything in particular, but it was just a glorious moment with her at that very young age. All of a sudden, every time we were down there and it was time to turn around and see that full moon coming up while it's still light and telling us that the night is going to be special, just like your parties are very special. So, David, thank you so much for being with us and sharing that. And I hope some people who are watching with us might get some ideas on how to connect and reconnect, because some people are still having a difficult time with that with the coronavirus. So, again, thank you very much. Uh, Thanks to
Thank you,
ThinkTech
Ken.
Hawaii too for doing everything and for us and providing the technical support. And thanks to all of the viewers who are tuning in and So on behalf of David and I, aloha.
Thank you so much for watching ThinkTech Hawaii. If you like what we do, please like us and click the subscribe button on YouTube and the follow button on Vimeo. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and donate to us at thinktechhawaii.com. Mahalo.